Let's give a very warm hello to the man who's literally written the book on B2B marketing and sales, Mr. John Coe. John, thank you so much for joining us today. It's an absolute pleasure. I'm sure we're going to get many words of wisdom from the Godfather, one of the forefathers of B2B marketing. And I want to hear from, both sides of your mouth, John, if I may. Talk to us about what that means in terms of, as a marketeer, why both sides of your mouth are important.
Well, I started my career in sales and spent quite a bit of time in sales and sales management. And then, according to my friends in sales, I went to the dark side and went to marketing, primarily because of lead generation. And that's a long story. But the fact of the matter is that I think any marketer in B2B needs to either have been in sales or really understand sales. It's sort of the old phrase of walk a mile in my shoes will really equip the marketers to do a better job.
That's a very easily said thing, John, but not every marketeer either has the chance or the inclination. So if you're a B2B marketer listening into this and you haven't had the chance to have a sales role, rather than quit your job and go to the light side, rather than the dark side, any advice for marketers to go, well, look, if you can't take a job in sales, here's how you can at least empathize and understand that brethren?
Well, and that's a good question, because when I get a new client, one of the things that I ask them is, can I travel with their salespeople for a day or two? And I don't mean just one salesperson. I'd like to travel with at least 2 or 3 and take my time to go with them. And here's what I find. Within the first half day, they're sort of suspicious of me. But then they know that I know something about sales, and then they open up. And when they open up, the gems that come out of their mouths are just great and will be a great assistance to help them in the future.
Yeah, you've got to get that trust, right? And then that empathy that means that they will see you as friend, not foe. And John, if we take that thought, your very famous book, The Fundamentals of B2B Sales and Marketing, right? There's the clue. You've got this new sales coverage model. And I just wonder whether that's something that's a useful theory for marketeers to use in terms of understanding and that empathy that we're looking for with sales.
Well, first I have to comment that not all situations are the same. If you're selling office furniture, it's a whole lot different than selling a machine tool that has to be designed. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about those situations, we really need to define what it is you're selling. Then you can begin to design a coverage model that makes sense. For instance, do you have distributors or not? Is your coverage model include face-to-face as a primary media? So the coverage models vary, but they vary based on what it is you're selling and, frankly, who you're selling to. As a quick example, if you're in the manufacturing world, you're selling to engineers. You're not selling to purchasing agents. So the sales coverage models vary greatly based on those 2 elements. And I can go into different kinds of coverage models, but the fact of the matter is that they do vary greatly.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And we talk a lot these days about something that's probably common sense, but it's been coined more popularly, buyer group marketing. The idea that you're talking about selling a product, as you say, engineers are the primary sales focus. But of course, from a marketing point of view, we might need in large organizations that we're targeting to talk to lots of different functions or roles within that company who have a different interest in the product or service. And we have to recognize and adapt how we talk to them.
Well, and that's now being called account-based marketing. And I really agree with that totally. Even when I was back in sales a long time ago, I used to do things that people didn't want me to do. As an example, many years ago, I was calling on Ford Motor, talked to the purchasing agent, but then I went to the plant and talked to production scheduling. And as a result, we got more than we were that our contract called for. So account-based marketing is the new, I don't want to say new silver bullet, but I think the statistic now, if you're selling to enterprise accounts, there may be between 5 and 10 or even more people that might be involved in the decision. So that's key for people to understand, and it's key for marketers to understand who they have to communicate to. And by the way, the communication is not the same. It has to relate to the needs or the functions of those people.
It's not one size fits all, right? That's what you've very eloquently said, is you can't just assume. Also, that account-based marketing thing, John, I'm pretty right that your version of that would be, Steve, Mark, that don't impress me much. I was doing that in 1980. It just wasn't called ABM back then. But the principles of what's modern ABM is what you've just described, that there's still that good
back
practice.
Then it was called strategic account management. That started in the 1960s.
John, Mark here, really, really a privilege to speak to you. You, at the top of the interview, were described as one of the forefathers or the godfathers of B2B marketing. Today, B2B marketing is one of the fastest growing industries across the developed world. What did you see all those years ago that meant you knew enough to buy up the web domain b2bmarketing.com? How did you see what was coming? What did you see?
Well, it wasn't so much what I saw as what I had experienced already. And I think back in the days that I registered b2bmarketing.com with GoDaddy, the reality was that people were underestimating the size of the B2B market. And let me give you just a quick example. Now, I don't know what kind of car you drive, but the matter of fact, you bought one consumer product, a car. Beneath that car, there are between 100 and 200 business-to-business suppliers that had a role in making that car. But people weren't realizing that. They were talking about the car as one consumer product. But the number of B2B companies involved in the production of that car were dramatically larger than people recognized. And I saw that because I was in sales. So when I moved into the marketing side, I began to talk to people in marketing that were not been in sales, and they just underestimated the size of and the potential of the market. Eventually, people began to realize that, and that's exactly what's happened and why the growth is the way it is.
Amazing. And what has shocked or surprised you most about the huge and rapid growth and proliferation of B2B marketing? The state of the B2B marketing industry today is still evolving. What has really, really surprised you?
Well, I guess being surprised or being challenged are two different sides of the equation. One of the things that surprised me in the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years is the amount of technology that has come into play. I'm an old face-to-face guy, and I emphasize old and maybe also emphasize face-to-face. And what has really happened is that a lot of tech, and when I say a lot of technology, we're talking about close to 14,000 software packages now that are in the sales and marketing world. And the issue here, in my opinion, is that people start to use the technology but forget the fundamentals. And therefore, they're sort of hoping that the technology solves their marketing problem or gets them enough sales leads or develops strong relationships, where in fact, if they forget the fundamentals, they're making a big mistake. So that's one of the surprises I think I've personally experienced. Now, I say that as an old guy, but when I talk to the young fellows, they think it's just great that they got all this technology.
It's a really interesting one, John, because there's a real balance, right? That the skill of the modern marketer has evolved and changed so much, sometimes to the good, because technology, there's so much more of it. As you say, 14,000. And actually, if you go rewind to 2011, that 14,000 was documented at about 150 platforms. So there's been this exponential growth. The candy store has got huge. So that gives you choice, but it also gives you potentially choice paralysis, but it also gives you the fundamentals of marketing are now about technology and data and other elements, not just the creative craft. Or are they? And I wonder whether, John, with all of the talk of AI over the last couple of years, has anything really changed? Have the fundamentals of strong B2B marketing changed? Or is it still business as usual, whatever the technology is, and at the moment, AI?
Well, let me talk about one thing that has not changed. And actually, I'm in the process of writing a report on the subject now. And the title of the report is The Emotional Side of the B2B Buying Equation. And what I'm really referring to is that we make and tend to make emotional decisions first, which sometimes we call trust, before we then turn to the facts of the matter. And one of the things that B2B marketing has tended to ignore is the emotional side. Now, the emotional side is tied directly to the risk that the individual takes to make the purchase decision. And if you don't deal with that, you're likely to lose the sale.
So agree with that, John, in terms of the idea that if you're a consumer and you buy a $10 thing, a mug like you're waving on screen, for example, if you buy a bad mug, it's only you that's responsible for that. Whereas if you buy a $10 thing with work, and of course you would spend a lot more, you're always spending somebody else's money. So it can drive very emotional decisions to do or not do things.
Yeah, and let me give you a quick example that I think everybody will relate to. Most companies have a CRM system. Let's assume that you're now responsible for either retaining or getting a new CRM system. The risk that you undertake to change that system could be career ending. So you've got to trust the company that you might be moving toward before you make that decision. But yet you review all of the marketing communications and they have not treated that element of the decision. So I think that one of the fundamentals that needs to come back into play is the degree of emotional trust you have to create in the selling process so that the purchase decision goes your way.
Are we back to that buying group again, or those key decision makers in the business? Because of course, let's just take you, me and Mark as three people that might work for a fictional company in different roles. We all have got to buy in and trust that that decision, the CRM in your example, is the right thing. But we'll all come from different stances. Maybe I'm the chief financial officer, Mark's the chief technology officer, and you're the chief marketing officer. Same product, the CRM, but we also need to recognize we got to earn a three-way trust with different messaging that resonates, not just one size fits all.
Correct, and you have to customize your communications to fit those needs and feelings of trust for each of those people. Good example, purchasing has a different level of need and trust that the individual, the user group has, the sales manager. So you have to think clearly about those communications that will resonate, and I'll use the word relevant, be relevant to those different people and their different needs. This is not frequently done, but I think it's going to be coming more and more into play as more and more people are writing about using basically psychology and emotional factors in the purchase decision in the B2B world, which is sort of it's not logical to say those things when you talk about, machine tools as an example. But there is an emotional side to purchasing a machine tool.
John, Mark here again. Do you remember the first time you ever heard the phrase B2B marketing? Do you remember where you were and what you were doing?
Well, I have to admit that the phrase B2B marketing came from a creative director of an agency that I was working with in New York. We were tasked with giving a presentation to the agency staff about B2B. I was recently hired to basically pioneer the B2B world for them. And the creative director and I were tasked with making that presentation. On Friday, we talked and she said, let me think about it. I'll come back on Monday. And she had condensed business to business into the acronym B2B. And we used that for a while. And when I left the organization...
When are we talking, by the way? What kind of time frame for our history fans?
1997.
Wow, our century.
Yeah, well, it was. And when I left the organization, that name or an acronym resonated with me. And when I then registered b2bmarketing.com, that's how it came to be.
John, just a
no pun intended.
Just a very quick question. Have you bought any other domains right now, and can you share any of them? Have you got any good tips?
Well, it's interesting. Right now I'm involved with one of your compatriots over there, Richard, and we're talking about doing different things. And one of the things that we're talking about is education, possibly tips and techniques in B2B. And so a couple, B2B Academy, B2B Institute, there are a number of URLs that I've registered. Plus, I'm also introducing another element called speed consulting. And, it's a different kind of consulting, takes pace rapidly in 3 weeks. And I registered that as well. So, yes, I have registered a few more.
I would love to see your notebook of purchased URL domains, just to see if I can nick a few trends from you. Genuinely, I'll let Steve wrap up, but a privilege to speak to you. Thank you so much.
Lots and lots of bright ideas. Before you go, just back to that AI thing, if I may. You've talked rightly in the past about data decay, right? Data being such an important ingredient into B2B marketing. And I just wonder whether you could talk to anyone out there and go, look, your head's been turned by the opportunity to put more technology in by the way of AI, but where's the risk in terms of that data and AI? i.e., if you haven't got your data right, are we going to have compounded problems by using AI? Is there a risk here that people aren't surfacing?
Well, yeah, and I think data in the AI world, there's all kinds of applications for AI. And one of them is, by the way, to help update your CRM system. I remember that famous quote from a salesperson that was asked by the sales manager to update his CRM system or his CRM record. And his quote was, "I'd rather clean the company bathrooms than update my CRM." So obviously you've got some problems with data accuracy in the CRM if you're relying upon salespeople. Now that's an application for AI to come in and help update the data within your CRM. But on the other hand, you've got to be a bit careful because data changes so rapidly that you've really got to stay on top of the updates. I've run some studies. I actually have a report on the subject where if I had 100 managers in the room that I was speaking to, and I said, how many of those here in the last 12 months have had one or more changes in their business card? Of course, many of them don't carry business cards anymore, but assume they did. The percentage of changes in the room is astounding. It's 70% will have one or more changes in their business card. Now, about half will have maybe changed jobs, gone to another company, but the other half have changed positions within a company, or the company has changed, maybe moved or been merged. So you've got to stay on top of that data decay, I call it data decay, or else you're going to be communicating to people that aren't there.
Yeah, kind of zombie communication. It's so important, isn't it? Because it's such a dull topic to most marketers' data, but it's such a vital one. If you want great output, whether you use AI or whatever you use, you need great input. However, we've had great input from you as well as great output. So John, a huge thanks for making time for us and for sharing everything and for everything you've done over, I don't want to embarrass you, but many, many decades of being, from 1997 when you went, hey, this B2B marketing or B2B marketing, not alone B2Bmarketing.com, there might be something in it, and there still is, and thank you for that.
You're welcome so much for asking me the questions and calling me the Godfather of B2B. And I'll close with the idea that the Godfather must have an offer you can't refuse. So call me.
I kiss you on both cheeks, John. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
John Coe there, a true expert, author, and all-round know-it-all in a great way on the world of B2B marketing. If you want to find out more about his book, The Fundamentals of Business-to-Business Sales and Marketing, and really you should, it's available in bookstores and online now.